The bank teller froze and asked, "Are you aware this account was emptied?" My father had been busy. The fluorescent lights above made everything look sickly pale, including Sarah Chen's face when she pulled up my account information. Her fingers had been flying across the keyboard just seconds before, but now they hung frozen above the keys like she'd been electrocuted. "Are you aware this account was emptied?" she asked, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. I blinked at her through the bulletproof glass, certain I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "The joint account ending in 7394, she said, glancing around the Wells Fargo branch like she was worried someone might overhear. "It shows a zero balance as of March 15th. March 15th. 2 days before Dad's heart attack. My chest tightened. That's impossible. There was $40,000 in that account last week. I checked it online on Monday. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands, navigating to the mobile banking app. Sure enough, the account that should have contained my entire life savings, every penny I'd scraped together for a house down payment over the past 6 years, showed $0. There was a large withdrawal on the 15th, Sarah continued, her professional composure cracking slightly. $39,867. The remaining balance was transferred out the same day. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred together. But my father, he died on the 17th. He was in the hospital that whole day. I'm showing the transactions occurred at 2:47 p.m. and 2:53 p.m. on March 15th. Both were conducted in person at our downtown branch. She paused, studying something on her screen. Mr. David Michael Harrison, age 63. Joint account holder. Dad. Of course it was Dad, he was the only other person with access. But why would he clean out our shared account without telling me? We'd opened it together 3 years ago when I moved back to Denver to help take care of him after Mom passed. He'd insisted on being a joint holder, just in case something happens to you, kiddo. For emergencies, he'd said. In case I ever needed him to handle my finances if I couldn't. This wasn't the emergency either of us had envisioned. Is there any indication where the money went?" I managed to ask. Sarah's eyes darted to her supervisor's office, then back to me. "I can see it was withdrawn as a cashier's check, but I can't access details about the recipient without. I'm his daughter. His only daughter." The lie came easily. Marcus was his son too, technically, but my half-brother had barely spoken to Dad in the past 5 years. He just passed away 3 days ago. "I'm trying to settle his affairs." Her expression softened. "I'm so sorry for your loss. But I still can't release information about where the funds were transferred without proper documentation. You'd need to bring in the death certificate, letters testamentary." I nodded numbly, barely hearing her. $40,000. 6 years of working double shifts at the restaurant, of skipping vacations and driving my beat-up Honda until it practically wheezed. 6 years of dreaming about finally having my own place instead of renting that cramped apartment above Mrs. Rodriguez's garage. All of it, gone. The worst part wasn't even the money, though. It was the betrayal. Dad knew how important that house fund was to me. We'd talked about it just last month over dinner, how close I was to having enough for a decent down payment in this insane Denver market. So why would he take it all? The drive to Dad's house felt like moving through molasses. Every red light stretched into eternity, giving me more time to spiral through increasingly dark theories about what had happened to my money. By the time I pulled into his driveway, I'd convinced myself that maybe he developed dementia in his final weeks, that the man who'd raised me to value honesty above all else had somehow lost his mind without me noticing. The spare key was still under the ceramic frog by the front steps, the same hiding spot Mom had used for 20 years. Dad never could bring himself to change her little traditions. The house smelled like his aftershave and the lavender air freshener he bought in bulk because it reminded him of Mom's garden. I went straight to his home office, a cramped room that had once been a closet under the stairs. His ancient desktop computer wheezed to life after I hit the power button 3 times. While it loaded, I rifled through the filing cabinet where he kept all his financial documents, organized with the same military precision he'd maintained since his army days. Bank statements, utility bills, insurance papers, everything exactly where it should be, except for one glaring absence. The folder labeled Joint Account, Emma, was empty. My phone buzzed with a text from my half-brother Marcus, *K, sorry I missed the funeral stuff yesterday. Rough week. Can we grab coffee sometime? Want to talk about Dad's things, *. I stared at the message, struck by something I hadn't considered before. Marcus had been around more often in the past few months. I'd chalked it up to him finally trying to repair his relationship with Dad before it was too late, but now. When had those visits started? Right around Christmas, I realized. Right around the time Dad had begun acting strange. The computer finally finished loading, and I clicked through to Dad's email account. He'd given me the password years ago, MSMom 1987, in case anything ever happened to him. The inbox was mostly spam and newsletters, but buried in his sent folder from March 14th, I found something that made my blood run cold. An email to Cornerstone Bank downtown, sent at 11:23 p.m. the night before he'd emptied our account. Dear Ms. Rodriguez. This confirms our phone conversation regarding the new account setup. I'll be in tomorrow afternoon to complete the cashier's check deposit as discussed. Please ensure the account restrictions we talked about are in place exactly as specified, *. The safety deposit box rental should also be ready. Box holder, Emma Louise Harrison. I'll provide the sealed envelope at that time, *. Thank you for your discretion in this matter. David Harrison. A safety deposit box. In my name. I read the email 3 more times, my heart hammering against my ribs. Dad hadn't just taken my money, he'd planned it. This wasn't some confused, grief-stricken decision made in his final days. This was calculated, deliberate. But why? My phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus, *, actually, could we meet today? Kind of urgent. There's something I need to tell you about Dad, *. I stared at the message, pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to solve clicking into place. Marcus's sudden interest in visiting Dad. The timing of Dad's strange behavior. The careful, secretive way he'd moved my money just days before his death. And now Marcus wanted to talk about something urgent. My fingers trembled as I typed back, what kind of something? The three dots appeared immediately, disappeared, then appeared again. Whatever Marcus was typing was taking him a long time to work up the courage to send. Finally, I think I know why Dad was acting weird lately. We need to talk in person. This is bad, Emma. Really bad, My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. Marcus knew something. Of course he did, he'd been visiting Dad more frequently, and now my money was gone and Dad was dead and Marcus had something really bad to tell me. I tried calling him immediately, but it went straight to voicemail. His outgoing message was the same one he'd had for 3 years, you know what to do. No name, no personality, just like Marcus himself. Call me back, I said after the beep. Now. I'm at Dad's house and I need answers. While I waited, I kept digging through Dad's computer. His browser history showed multiple visits to gambling addiction websites, not the kind where you gamble, but the kind where you learn about gambling problems. Articles about warning signs, family impact, financial devastation. He'd bookmarked a page titled, When Someone You Love Steals From You, Protecting Yourself and Your Family. My stomach dropped. Marcus had always had a problem with scratch-offs and sports betting, ever since high school. But Dad had told me years ago that Marcus had gotten help, that he was doing better. We'd even joked about it last Thanksgiving when Marcus won $20 on a Broncos game, at least it's going the right direction this time, Dad had said. But what if it hadn't been going the right direction? What if it had gotten worse? I found more browser history, how to check if someone is using your credit, signs of identity theft, legal options when family member steals. The searches went back 4 months, all the way to December. Right when Marcus had started coming around again. The pieces were forming a picture I didn't want to see. My phone rang, making me jump. Marcus. Emma, thank God, he said before I could even say hello. His voice sounded rough, like he'd been crying or hadn't slept in days. Listen, I need to explain some things before you find out another way. What did you do? The words came out flat, emotionless. A long pause. How much do you know? I know Dad emptied our joint account 2 days before he died. I know he set up something at Cornerstone Bank. I know he was researching gambling addiction and family theft for months. My voice was getting louder with each word. I know you've been lying to us about something. So why don't you save us both some time and just tell me what the hell you did to him? Marcus let out a shaky breath. I never meant for it to go this far. It started small, just a couple hundred here and there when I was behind on rent. Dad's credit was so good, and he never checked his statements that carefully. The room started spinning. You stole from him. I borrowed from him. I was going to pay it back, I swear. But then I had this sure thing with March Madness, and if I could just get enough together for the right bet, I could win back everything I owed and more. How much, Marcus? I could barely get the words out. It's not just the money, Emma. I mean, yes, there's the money, but I took out credit cards. In his name. And there was this title loan on his car, and... How much? Silence stretched between us for what felt like hours. $87,000, he whispered. Give or take. The phone slipped from my hand and clattered to the floor. $87,000. More than twice what had been in our joint account. Dad had discovered that his son, the boy he tried so hard to reconnect with, the kid he'd never given up on despite years of disappointment, had been systematically robbing him blind. And somehow, that discovery had led to Dad taking my money and hiding it somewhere I couldn't access it. But why punish me for Marcus's crimes? Unless he wasn't punishing me at all. I picked up the phone with trembling fingers. Marcus was still there, his breathing ragged on the other end. Emma? Emma, are you there? I'm here. My voice sounded hollow, distant. Keep talking. I know how this sounds, but I was going to tell him. I had a payment plan worked out with this guy I know, and I just needed a few more weeks to. When did he find out? Another pause. February 28th. I remember because it was right after the Super Bowl. I'd lost big on some prop bets, and the credit card payment was due. Dad called me that morning, said his bank had flagged some unusual activity. February 28th. Almost 3 weeks before Dad emptied our account. 3 weeks of knowing his son had betrayed him, 3 weeks of planning whatever he'd done with my money. He didn't yell, Marcus continued, his voice breaking. That was the worst part. He just got real quiet and asked me to come over. When I got there, he had all these statements printed out, spread across the kitchen table like some kind of crime scene. Credit cards I'd opened, loans I'd taken, even the equity line I'd gotten against the house. The house. Dad's house, where I was sitting right now. You put his house at risk. The payments weren't that bad. I thought I could handle it, but then March Madness started and I got in over my head with this bookie, and... Stop. I couldn't listen to any more excuses. Just tell me what Dad said when he found out. Marcus took a shuddering breath. He said he wasn't angry. That's what killed me, he said he wasn't angry, just disappointed. He asked me if I had a problem, really had a problem, and I told him yes. He said he'd help me get into treatment, but that there would be consequences. What kind of consequences? He said he needed to protect what was left. That he couldn't trust me anymore, but he wouldn't let Mom's memory be destroyed by my mistakes. He was talking all crazy, Emma, about making sure the right people got what they deserved. The right people. My pulse quickened. Did he mention me? He said. Marcus's voice dropped to almost a whisper. He said you were the good one. That you'd never asked him for anything, never taken advantage. He said he was going to make sure my problem didn't become your problem. I thought about the empty joint account, the mysterious safety deposit box, the careful planning Dad had done in his final weeks. Marcus, how much did Dad know about my savings? Everything. He was so proud of you for saving up for that house. He used to brag about it to his army buddies, how his daughter was going to be a homeowner before she turned 30, how responsible you were. Marcus paused. Why? Because Dad had taken my $40,000 and hidden it somewhere, right before he died. Because he'd known Marcus had stolen nearly twice that amount, and he'd been planning something. Some kind of protection, some kind of consequence. Some kind of test. Marcus, I need you to think carefully. In those last few weeks, did Dad say anything about Cornerstone Bank? Or about setting up accounts, safety deposit boxes, anything like that? Not to me directly, but... He trailed off. There was this one day, maybe a week before he died. I stopped by to bring him groceries, part of trying to make amends, you know. He was on the phone with someone, talking about account restrictions and beneficiary instructions. When he saw me, he hung up real quick. Account restrictions. Beneficiary instructions. The email I'd found made more sense now. Dad hadn't just moved my money, he'd moved it with specific rules about who could access it and when. Did he seem sick to you? In those last weeks? Tired, Marcus said. Really tired. But not sick. More like, defeated, maybe. Like he was carrying something heavy. His voice cracked again. I think I broke his heart, Emma. I think finding out about the money, about what I'd been doing behind his back. I think it literally broke his heart. A heart attack at 63. No family history of heart disease. Dad had always been in decent shape, ate well, didn't smoke. But stress could kill you just as surely as any other disease. Where are you now? I asked. My apartment. I've been hiding out since the funeral. I couldn't face you, knowing what I'd done. Knowing that Dad died thinking his son was a thief. Dad died thinking his son is a thief, I corrected. Because you are one. Emma, please. I'm going to Cornerstone Bank tomorrow morning. Whatever Dad set up, whatever he planned, I'm going to find out. I stood up from Dad's desk chair, my legs unsteady. And Marcus? If you've cost me my house because of your gambling problem, if Dad's plan somehow makes me responsible for your debts, I will never forgive you. Do you understand me? It's not like that, I swear. Dad wouldn't do that to you. But as I hung up the phone, I wasn't so sure. Dead men could be just as vindictive as living ones, and I had no idea what kind of judgment my father had passed down from beyond the grave. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dad's face from that last dinner we'd shared, March 10th, just a week before he died. He'd seemed distracted, kept checking his phone and asking weird questions about my job, my future plans, whether I felt secure in life. I thought he was just being a worried father, maybe having one of those mortality moments that hit people after they lose their spouse. Now I realized he'd been conducting an interview. Gathering evidence about which of his children deserved his protection. At 3 a.m., I gave up on sleep and drove back to Dad's house. I needed to find more pieces of whatever puzzle he'd left behind. This time, I went through everything, every drawer, every closet, every book on his shelves where he might have hidden documents. In his bedroom, tucked inside an old copy of The Art of War that Mom had bought him as a joke, I found a handwritten list dated March 3rd. Emma, joint account, $40,000, her money, kept separate. House equity remaining, $127,000 after Marcus's loan. Life insurance, $50,000. Savings account, $8,400. Checking, $1,200. Below that, in Dad's careful handwriting. Total Marcus damage, $87,300. E's money must be protected. House sale can cover debts plus treatment. Insurance goes to E, she earned it. My throat tightened. Dad had been doing math, calculating how to clean up Marcus's mess while protecting what was mine. But there was more writing at the bottom of the page, in different ink like he'd added it later. Can't trust M with knowledge of E's money. Must ensure E gets full truth before accessing funds. Letter will explain everything, she needs to understand what he did. She deserves choice, forgive or cut ties. A letter. Dad had written me a letter. I tore through the rest of the house with new urgency, but found nothing. Whatever letter he'd written, it wasn't here. It had to be at Cornerstone Bank, probably in that safety deposit box. By 6 a.m., I was sitting in my car outside the bank, waiting for them to open. I brought every document I could think of, Dad's death certificate, my driver's license, the joint account statements. My hands shook as I sipped gas station coffee and watched employees unlock the front doors. The woman at the information desk directed me to Jennifer Martinez, a banking officer who looked barely older than me. When I explained why I was there, her expression grew serious. Mr. Harrison was very specific about his instructions, she said, pulling up something on her computer. The safety deposit box is indeed registered to you, but there are some unusual access conditions. What kind of conditions? Jennifer turned her monitor toward me. The box can only be opened if you're accompanied by the secondary contact person listed on the account. Both parties must be present and provide identification. My heart sank. Who's the secondary contact? Marcus David Harrison. Your brother. Of course. Dad's final manipulation, I couldn't get my money or his letter without facing Marcus directly. Without bringing the thief into the room where Dad's truth waited. There's more, Jennifer continued. Mr. Harrison deposited a cashier's check for $43,200 into a restricted savings account also in your name. The funds can't be accessed until after you've opened the safety deposit box. Both of you have to sign release forms. $43,000. My original $40,000 plus interest, plus something extra. Dad had grown my money even as his world collapsed around him. But he'd also made sure I couldn't claim it without confronting Marcus and whatever truth was waiting in that box. My phone buzzed, Emma, I know you're probably at the bank. I'm here too. We need to do this together, I looked up to see Marcus walking through the front doors, his face pale and drawn. He'd lost weight since the funeral, and his usual cocky demeanor was nowhere to be found. How did you know I'd be here? Dad told me about the safety deposit box. Right before he died. Marcus sat down heavily in the chair next to me. He said when you were ready to hear the whole truth, I'd have to be there to face it with you. The whole truth. Whatever was in Dad's letter was apparently worse than Marcus had already confessed. What aren't you telling me? I asked. Marcus glanced at Jennifer, who was pretending not to listen. Can we open the box first? Dad's letter explains it better than I can. Mr. Harrison, Jennifer interrupted gently, I do need to verify some information before we proceed. The account shows some irregularities that require both parties to acknowledge certain disclosures. She handed us each a form. The heading read, Acknowledgement of Fraudulent Activity and Restitution Plan. My blood turned to ice as I scanned the document. It listed every credit card Marcus had opened in Dad's name, every loan, every forged signature. But at the bottom was something that made me physically ill. Asterisk joint account holder acknowledges awareness that secondary account holder, Emma Harrison, funds were at risk of seizure due to cosigner status on fraudulent debts. Protective transfer completed to prevent innocent party asset loss, asterisk. Cosigner status. I looked up at Marcus, horror dawning. What does that mean? Marcus wouldn't meet my eyes. Some of the credit applications, they required a higher income than I could claim. So I listed you as a co-applicant. I used your information. You put my name on stolen credit cards. Just as income verification. I thought. You made me liable for your debts. My voice was rising, drawing stares from other customers. Marcus, do you understand what you've done? They could have come after my assets, my credit, my future. Dad figured it out, Marcus said quickly. That's why he moved your money. The banks were starting to investigate, and your name was on some of the applications. He was protecting you from my mess. Jennifer cleared her throat diplomatically. Perhaps we should proceed to the safety deposit box. Mr. Harrison Sr.'s letter may provide additional clarity. I wanted to scream, to run, to grab Marcus by the throat and shake him until he understood the magnitude of what he'd done. Instead, I signed the acknowledgement form with trembling hands. Dad hadn't just been protecting my money from Marcus's gambling debts. He'd been protecting me from going to prison. The safety deposit box room felt like a tomb. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Jennifer led us into the small, windowless space lined with metal boxes from floor to ceiling. The air smelled like old paper and fear. Box 247, Jennifer said, inserting her key into the top lock. Ms. Harrison, your key should be in the envelope we gave you. My hands shook as I fumbled with the small brass key. It took 3 tries to get it into the bottom lock, Marcus standing so close behind me I could hear his ragged breathing. The box slid out with a metallic scrape that seemed to echo forever. Inside was a manila envelope sealed with tape, my name written across it in Dad's careful handwriting. Underneath that, a smaller white envelope labeled, For Emma, read first. I picked up the smaller envelope with trembling fingers. The paper was thick, expensive, the kind Dad used for important correspondence. Through the cream-colored paper, I could see the shadow of handwritten text. Maybe I should wait outside, Marcus said quietly. No. My voice came out harder than I intended. Dad wanted you here for this. You're going to face whatever he wrote. I tore open the envelope and unfolded a single sheet of paper. Dad's handwriting covered both sides in his characteristic neat script. My dearest Emma. Asterisk if you're reading this, then I'm gone and you've discovered what Marcus did to our family. I'm sorry you had to learn this way, but I needed to be sure you understood everything before making your decisions about the future, asterisk. Asterisk by now you know about the money he stole, but there's more. The credit cards and loans were just the beginning. In January, Marcus convinced me to co-sign for what he called a business loan, $25,000 that he swore would help him start a food truck. I should have known better, but I wanted so badly to believe he was finally getting his life together, asterisk. I looked up at Marcus, who had gone completely white. A food truck? You told him you were starting a business? Emma, I can explain. Keep reading, he whispered. Please. I turned back to the letter. Asterisk the business loan went straight to his bookie. But worse than the money was discovering he'd been intercepting my mail for months, opening credit cards I never knew existed. Your name appeared on 3 applications as a household member, contributing to income. Marcus forged your signature on 2 of them, asterisk. Asterisk Emma, sweetheart, you need to understand, I didn't just move your money to protect it from Marcus. I moved it because Pinnacle Credit Services was preparing to freeze all assets associated with fraudulent accounts pending investigation. Your checking account, your savings, even your car loan could have been affected, asterisk. The room started spinning. My car loan. Marcus slumped against the wall of safety deposit boxes. I listed it as collateral on one of the applications. I thought it would never come up, but when the credit companies started investigating. You used my CR as collateral for gambling debts. I could barely breathe. Marcus, I could have lost everything. My apartment, my job, how would I get to work without a car? Dad fixed it. Marcus said desperately. He paid off your car loan completely in February. Check your credit report, you own that Honda free and clear now. I stared at him, processing this information. Dad had paid off my car loan early, something I'd wondered about when I stopped getting payment notices. He'd told me it was an early birthday gift. It had really been protection from my brother's crimes. I forced myself to keep reading. Asterisk the hardest part was realizing how long this had been going on. I found evidence going back 18 months, small charges on my credit cards that I'd assumed were mistakes, mail that went missing, even the time my debit card was compromised last spring. It was all Marcus, asterisk. Asterisk but the final straw was discovering he'd been telling people, including his bookie, that I was wealthy. That the house was worth more than it is, that I had substantial savings. He made me a target, Emma. I started getting calls from people demanding money Marcus owed them. People who knew where I lived, asterisk. My blood ran cold. People were threatening Dad. Marcus nodded miserably. Just phone calls. They weren't going to actually do anything. How do you know that? How could you possibly know that? I was on my feet now, the letter clutched in my hands. You made our father afraid in his own home. I was handling it. I had a payment plan worked out. With what money, Marcus? You didn't have any money. You'd stolen everything you could get your hands on. Jennifer cleared her throat from the doorway. I'll give you folks some privacy. Please let me know when you're ready to proceed with the account access. After she left, I sank back into the chair and finished reading Dad's letter. Asterisk, I've spent the last 3 weeks of my life cleaning up Marcus's mess as best I can. Your money is safe in a restricted account that only you can access. The house will need to be sold to pay off the remaining debts, but the equity should be enough to cover everything and pay for Marcus's treatment, if he chooses to get help. Asterisk. Asterisk, Emma, I need you to decide something, and it's not fair of me to put this burden on you, but I don't see another choice. I've structured everything so that Marcus cannot access any funds unless you agree to it. The money for his treatment, the payment plan for his debts, even his ability to avoid criminal charges, it all depends on your forgiveness. Asterisk. Asterisk, you can walk away. Take your money, take your portion of the life insurance, and let Marcus face the consequences of his choices alone. The district attorney already has a file on the credit fraud. Without the restitution plan I've arranged, Marcus will very likely go to prison. Asterisk. Asterisk, or you can choose to help him one last time. The manila envelope contains legal documents that will clear both your names and provide a path forward. But Emma, sweetheart, you don't owe him this. You don't owe him anything. Asterisk. Asterisk, whatever you decide, know that I love you and I'm proud of the woman you've become. You are everything I hoped you'd be. Asterisk. All my love. Dad. Asterisk P.S. Your house fund now has $47,000. I added the money I've been saving for a new truck. You deserve that house, honey. Don't let anyone take your dreams away. Asterisk. I set the letter down with shaking hands and looked at Marcus, who was crying openly now. 47,000, I said numbly. Emma, I'm so sorry. I know that doesn't mean anything, but you would have let me go to prison. The words came out flat, emotionless. If Dad hadn't figured it out, if he hadn't protected me, you would have let the police arrest me for fraud I didn't commit. Marcus wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I never thought it would go that far. I thought I could win everything back before anyone noticed. That's not an answer, Marcus. Would you have told the truth if they'd come to arrest me? The silence stretched between us like a chasm. I don't know, he whispered finally. I want to say yes, but I don't know. I was so scared, and the addiction, it makes you do things you never thought you could do. I picked up the manila envelope and hefted its weight. Dad's final gift, the power to save or damn his son. The power to choose mercy or justice. The power to keep our family together or tear it apart forever. I opened the manila envelope with steady hands, surprised by my own calm. Inside were 3 sets of legal documents, each clipped together with a yellow sticky note in Dad's handwriting. The first set was labeled Option 1, Full Restitution Plan. I scanned the pages, my heart sinking with each paragraph. It was a detailed payment schedule that would take 8 years to complete. Marcus would enter a court-supervised gambling addiction program, work full-time in a job approved by his probation officer, and pay back every stolen penny plus interest. The house would be sold, the proceeds split between debt repayment and my inheritance. Marcus would live in a halfway house for the first 2 years. But here was the catch, I would have to co-sign as his guarantor. If Marcus relapsed, if he missed payments, if he violated any terms of the agreement, I would become legally responsible for the remaining balance. $63,000 that could destroy my credit, my house fund, my entire future. Emma, Marcus said quietly, you don't have to. Option 2, I interrupted, flipping to the second set of documents. Dad's sticky note read, clean break, Emma protected, Marcus faces consequences alone. This option transferred all assets to me immediately. My $47,000 house fund, my portion of the life insurance, even Dad's truck which was apparently worth another $8,000. Marcus would get nothing except a lawyer Dad had already paid for through the end of the criminal proceedings. The district attorney's file would proceed without the restitution plan as leverage. I looked up at my half-brother, trying to remember when I'd stopped seeing him as family and started seeing him as a threat. What's option 3? Marcus asked, though his voice suggested he didn't really want to know. The third set of documents was thinner, just 2 pages. Dad's note said, for if Emma chooses to start over somewhere new. I read quickly, my eyebrows rising with each line. This option liquidated everything, house, accounts, life insurance, even Dad's vintage army footlocker that was apparently worth $3,000. The total would be split equally between Marcus and me after all debts were paid. But there was a requirement that we both relocate at least 500 miles from Denver and maintain no contact for a minimum of 5 years. He really thought of everything, I murmured. What does it say? We each get about $38,000 and never have to see each other again. I set the papers down and studied Marcus's face. Is that what you want? To disappear and pretend we were never family? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at the open safety deposit box. What I want is to go back 18 months and make different choices. But since I can't do that. He looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. What I want is whatever gives you the best chance at the life Dad dreamed of for you. That's not an answer, Marcus. Yes, it is. He straightened up, and for the first time in months, I saw a flash of the brother I'd grown up with. Emma, I stole from you. I put your name on fraudulent documents. I made our father spend the last weeks of his life cleaning up my mess instead of enjoying his retirement. The only reason I'm not in jail right now is because Dad died trying to protect both of us. He pulled out his phone and showed me the screen, a contact page for Turning Point Recovery Center. I called them yesterday, after we talked. I have an intake appointment tomorrow morning, regardless of what you decide about the money. But Emma, if you choose option 1, if you take the risk of being my guarantor. He paused, his voice breaking slightly. I need you to know that I will spend every day of the next 8 years proving I'm worth that trust. I stared at the phone, processing what he was telling me. You're going to treatment either way. I'm going to treatment either way. The question is whether I'm going as someone whose family believes in second chances, or as someone who destroyed everything good in his life. A year ago, the choice would have been easy. Marcus was my annoying little brother who made bad decisions but always meant well. But this wasn't about meaning well anymore. This was about $47,000, my dream house, and 8 years of wondering if he'd relapse and take me down with him. I need time to think, I said finally. How much time? I looked at the three options spread across the small table, each representing a completely different future. The rest of my life, probably. Marcus nodded slowly. Dad's lawyer said you have 30 days to decide. After that, the DA's office moves forward with whatever information they have. 30 days to choose between mercy and self-preservation. 30 days to decide if blood was thicker than betrayal. 30 days felt like both forever and no time at all. I left Cornerstone Bank with my head spinning and my purse containing 3 certified checks totaling $47,000, more money than I'd ever held at one time. Marcus had gone straight to his intake appointment, leaving me alone with Dad's impossible choice. For the first week, I threw myself into research. I called the district attorney's office and spoke with ADA Patricia Williams, who confirmed that without the restitution agreement, Marcus was looking at felony fraud charges carrying 2 to 5 years in prison. I contacted the credit monitoring services and discovered that my credit score, miraculously, remained untouched. Dad had moved fast enough to prevent any damage to my financial history. I even drove by 3 different houses in my price range, trying to imagine myself living in each one. The Tudor on Maple Street had a perfect kitchen. The ranch on Oak Avenue had a fenced yard where I could finally get the dog I'd always wanted. But every time I pictured myself turning a key in one of those front doors, I saw Marcus in a prison jumpsuit instead. By day 10, I developed a routine of arguing with myself. Mornings were for righteous anger. Marcus had stolen from his dying father, forged my signature, and put my entire future at risk. He deserved whatever consequences came his way. But evenings brought unwelcome memories. Marcus teaching me to ride a bike when Dad was deployed. Marcus staying up all night with me when I had pneumonia in 7th grade. Marcus driving 6 hours to help me move apartments last year, refusing to take gas money. You're overthinking this, my friend Jessica said over coffee on day 12. He's a criminal, Emma. You don't owe criminals anything, even if you're related to them. But then I got a call from Linda Morrison, Dad's neighbor for 15 years. Emma, honey, I hope you don't mind me reaching out, she said, her voice wavering. I know this is a difficult time, but I felt like you should know, your father came to see me a few days before he passed. My grip tightened on the phone. What did he say? He was worried about you. Said he was afraid his decisions were going to put too much pressure on your shoulders. He asked me what I would do if I had to choose between protecting my daughter and saving my son. I sank into Dad's old recliner, the leather still holding the faint scent of his aftershave. What did you tell him? I told him that sometimes there isn't a right choice, only a choice you can live with. But Emma. She paused, and I could hear her taking a shaky breath. He also said something else. He said Marcus reminded him of his own brother. My blood went cold. Dad never talked about Uncle Ray except to say he died young. What do you mean? Your uncle had problems too. Drinking, mostly, but also gambling. Your father tried to help him for years, gave him money, bailed him out of trouble. But eventually David had to choose between enabling Ray's addiction and protecting your mother and you kids. What happened to Uncle Ray? The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. Finally, Linda whispered, he died alone in a motel room in Reno. David found out 3 weeks after the funeral. I hung up the phone with trembling hands. Dad had been here before. He'd chosen to cut off his brother, and Ray had died alone because of it. No wonder Dad had structured his plan to give me the choice. He couldn't bear to abandon another family member, but he also couldn't risk destroying his daughter's future. That night, I found myself at Resurrection Cemetery, standing in front of Dad's grave with my laptop bag slung over my shoulder. The headstone was simple granite with his name, dates, and beloved father and husband. No mention of the impossible decisions he'd been forced to make. I don't know what you want me to do, I said to the stone. If I help Marcus and he relapses, I lose everything. But if I don't help him and something happens. I couldn't finish the sentence. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, *Emma, this is Dr. Sarah Chen from Turning Point Recovery. Marcus asked me to contact you. Could we speak, *? I called the number immediately. Dr. Chen's voice was warm but professional as she explained Marcus's progress in his first 2 weeks of treatment. He's been very honest about the scope of his addiction and the damage it caused, she said. But I want you to understand something, Emma, gambling addiction has one of the highest relapse rates of any behavioral addiction. Even with intensive treatment, the statistics aren't encouraging. What are you saying? I'm saying that if you're considering the financial guarantor arrangement your father set up, you need to understand the risks. Marcus seems genuinely committed to recovery, but commitment alone isn't always enough. After I hung up, I sat in my car in the cemetery parking lot and did the math. If I chose option 1 and Marcus completed the program successfully, I'd keep my $47,000 and he'd get a second chance. But if he relapsed, I'd lose everything, the house fund, my car, probably my apartment when I couldn't make rent. Option 2 meant I got everything and Marcus went to prison. Clean, simple, safe. Option 3 meant we both started over, far away from all the damage we'd done to each other. I was still sitting there when my phone rang. Marcus. Emma, I know you're not supposed to hear from me during the decision period, but I had to tell you something. Marcus, you're not supposed to. I remembered something. About the night Dad died. My heart stopped. What do you mean? He called me around midnight on March 16th. I was high on adrenaline from a poker game, wasn't really listening. But he said something about making sure you understood that none of this was your fault. That he tried to build bridges, but sometimes you have to burn them to save what matters most. The line crackled with static as Marcus's voice broke. Emma, I think he knew his heart was going to give out. I think the stress of choosing between us was literally killing him, and he made his choice anyway. I closed my eyes, seeing Dad's face that last night, the way he'd hugged me extra long when I left after dinner. There's something else, Marcus continued. Dr. Chen showed me statistics about guarantor agreements. 68% of people who co-sign for addiction recovery payments end up financially ruined when the addict relapses. Why are you telling me this? Because I love you too much to let you gamble your future on mine. The words hung in the air between us like a confession and an absolution all at once. 18 days left to decide. I spent the next 3 days avoiding the decision entirely, throwing myself into work at the restaurant until my manager finally sent me home for snapping at customers. But on day 21, something happened that changed everything. I was sorting through more of Dad's papers when I found a medical bill dated February 15th, 6 weeks before he died. St. Joseph's Hospital, Cardiology Department. My hands shook as I read the diagnostic codes and treatment notes. Dad had been having chest pains for months. He'd known his heart was failing. The cardiologist's notes were clinical but clear. Patient presents with moderate coronary artery disease, likely stress-induced. Recommend immediate lifestyle changes and stress reduction. Patient declined medication, stating he had family matters to resolve first. He'd literally chosen to die protecting us rather than take medication that might have saved him. I was still processing this when my phone rang. Jennifer Martinez from Cornerstone Bank. Ms. Harrison, I apologize for calling, but we've received some concerning information. A Mr. Tony Castellanos came in yesterday asking about your father's accounts. He claimed Marcus owed him money and that David had agreed to cover the debt. My blood turned to ice. What did you tell him? Nothing, of course. But Emma, this man knew details about your father's finances that made me uncomfortable. Specific account numbers, the timing of the recent transactions. I think someone gave him inside information. After hanging up, I immediately called Dr. Chen at Turning Point Recovery. I need to speak with Marcus. Now. Emma, he's in group therapy, but given the urgency in your voice. Someone named Tony Castellanos is asking about Dad's money. Tell me Marcus didn't give his bookie information about the bank accounts. The silence stretched too long. I'll have Marcus call you immediately. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Marcus sounded panicked. Emma, I swear I didn't tell Tony about Cornerstone. But when I was using, I might have mentioned Dad's bank, and Tony's smart enough to. How much do you still owe him? 12,000. But Emma, listen to me, Tony isn't just some small-time bookie. He's connected to people who don't forgive debts just because someone goes to rehab. My hands started shaking. Are you saying he might come after me? I'm saying he might come after Dad's money, which means he might come after you. Marcus's voice cracked. Emma, you need to choose option 2. Take everything and disappear from my mess. I can handle prison better than I can handle you getting hurt because of my debts. That night, I couldn't stay at my apartment. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. I ended up back at Dad's house, deadbolting the door and checking every window twice. At 2 a.m., I was reading Dad's medical files when I found something that stopped my heart completely. Tucked inside his cardiology folder was a handwritten note dated March 10th, exactly 1 week before he died. Asterisk called Tony Castellanos today. Told him Marcus is in treatment and the family debts are being handled through legal channels. He was not pleased. Asked too many questions about Emma. Need to accelerate timeline. If something happens to me before this is resolved, Emma needs to know, Tony has been watching the house. Knows her schedule. She's not safe as long as Marcus's debt exists, asterisk. Asterisk note, increased life insurance beneficiary to Emma from $50,000 to $75,000. She'll need the extra money to relocate if necessary, asterisk. Dad had been protecting me from more than just financial liability. He'd been protecting me from a man dangerous enough to threaten a 63-year-old veteran with a heart condition. A man who was still out there, still owed $12,000, and now knew I had access to Dad's accounts. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, asterisk your father was smart to move the money. But debts don't die with the debtor. We should talk, asterisk. I stared at the message, my decision crystallizing with horrible clarity. This wasn't about forgiveness or family loyalty anymore. This was about survival. And I had exactly 9 days left to choose not just Marcus's future, but my own. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of Dad's old house made me grab the baseball bat I'd found in his closet. By dawn, I'd made a decision that surprised even me. I called Detective Ray Morrison, no relation to Linda next door, at Denver PD. We'd met briefly when they'd done the welfare check after Dad's heart attack, and he'd given me his card, just in case. Apparently, threatening text messages qualified as, just in case. Ms. Harrison, Detective Morrison said when I reached him at 7 a.m. What can I do for you? I need to report threats related to gambling debts. And I think my father's death might not have been as natural as we thought. 3 hours later, I was sitting in an interview room at the downtown precinct, watching Detective Morrison review printouts of every document I brought. Dad's medical records, the bank statements, Marcus's intake paperwork from Turning Point, and screenshots of last night's threatening text. Tony Castellanos, Detective Morrison said, tapping his pen against the table. We know Tony. Small-time sports betting operation that's been trying to go big time for the past 2 years. Gets nasty when people don't pay. Nasty how? Broken windows, slashed tires, the occasional hospital visit. Nothing we've been able to prove in court, but his name comes up in a lot of unfortunate coincidences. He looked up from the papers. Your father never filed a police report about harassment. He was trying to protect Marcus from criminal charges. And me from all of this. Detective Morrison studied Tony's text message again. The timing here bothers me. Your father dies March 17th. You discover the missing money March 20th. But Tony doesn't contact you until March 29th. That's almost 2 weeks. Why wait? I hadn't thought about that. Maybe he didn't know Dad was dead right away. Or maybe he was waiting to see how the estate would be handled. See if Marcus would inherit anything worth collecting. Detective Morrison leaned forward. Ms. Harrison, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think carefully before answering. In your father's final weeks, did he seem afraid of anything specific? Any changes in his routine, new security measures, anything like that? My mind raced back through Dad's last days. He started locking his car, which he never used to do. And he moved his bedroom to the den downstairs, said the stairs were bothering his knees, but now that I think about it. He wanted to sleep where he could see the front and back doors, Detective Morrison finished. Ms. Harrison, I think your father was more worried about immediate physical threats than he let on. Heart conditions can be exacerbated by sustained fear and stress. The room felt like it was spinning. Are you saying Tony Castellanos might have scared my father to death? I'm saying we need to take these threats seriously and move quickly. You mentioned 3 legal options your father prepared. Walk me through them again. I explained Dad's 3-envelope system, watching Detective Morrison's expression grow grimmer with each option. Here's the problem, he said finally. If you choose to help Marcus with the restitution plan, you're guaranteeing Tony gets paid. That makes the threat stop, but puts you at financial risk for 8 years. If you choose to keep everything and let Marcus face charges, Tony's debt remains unpaid and you become his primary target for collection. What about option 3? We both take our shares and leave Colorado. Detective Morrison shook his head. $38,000 isn't enough to disappear forever, and Tony has connections in other states. Running just delays the problem. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number, asterisk still waiting for that conversation. Your father was reasonable. Hope you will be too. T asterisk. Detective Morrison read the message over my shoulder. We need to move you to a safe location while we figure this out. I can't hide forever. And I have to make Dad's choice in 8 days or the DA moves forward with Marcus's case anyway. Then we need to accelerate our timeline too. He stood up, gathering the papers. Ms. Harrison, how do you feel about wearing a wire? 7 days left to choose between 3 futures, and now the police wanted me to become bait for a man who might have killed my father with fear alone. The next few hours passed in a blur of legal consultations and safety briefings. The plan was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. Would agree to meet Tony Castellanos in a controlled environment, wearing recording equipment, and try to get him to admit to threatening Dad before his death. If we can prove harassment contributed to your father's heart attack, we can charge Castellanos with criminally negligent homicide, Detective Morrison explained. That gives us leverage to shut down his operation and eliminate the debt entirely. And if the plan doesn't work, then we'll have enough evidence of extortion to arrest him anyway. Either way, the threats against you stop. But as I sat in the back of an unmarked police car, heading to a coffee shop where Tony Castellanos was waiting to discuss my family's debt obligations, I couldn't shake the feeling that Dad's impossible choice was about to become even more complicated. Because Tony Castellanos struck me as the kind of man who didn't give up easily. And I was about to find out just how far he'd go to collect what he thought he was owed. The coffee shop Tony had chosen was perfect for what Detective Morrison called controlled intimidation, public enough that he wouldn't try anything violent, but with enough secluded corners for private conversation. I sat at a corner table, the wire taped uncomfortably against my ribs, watching the door and trying to look like someone who might actually have $12,000 to hand over. He walked in at exactly 3 p.m., and I knew it was him immediately. Tony Castellanos looked like Central Casting's idea of a mid-level criminal, expensive leather jacket, gold chain, the kind of artificially white smile that suggested either good dental insurance or flexible morality about how to pay for cosmetic work. Emma Harrison, he said, sliding into the booth across from me without being invited. You look just like your old man. Same stubborn jaw. You knew my father. I kept my voice steady, remembering Detective Morrison's coaching. Get him talking about Dad first, establish the timeline. Dave and I had several conversations in his final weeks. Smart man, very protective of his family. Tony signaled the waitress for coffee, completely at ease. Shame what stress can do to a person's heart. The casual way he said it made my blood freeze. What's that supposed to mean? Just making conversation. Tony's smile didn't reach his eyes. Your father was very concerned about Marcus's financial obligations. Kept asking me to be patient while he sorted things out legally. But patience has its limits. Marcus is in treatment. The debts are being handled through the court system. Tony laughed, a sound like gravel in a blender. Court system. Honey, your brother didn't borrow money from Wells Fargo. He borrowed from me, and I don't accept payment plans from the state of Colorado. The waitress brought his coffee, and Tony waited until she was out of earshot before continuing. Here's what's going to happen. You've got access to Daddy's money now. I know you were at Cornerstone Bank last week. $12,000, and we call it even. And if I don't have $12,000, then we get creative about payment plans. His voice dropped lower. Your father thought he was real clever, moving money around, setting up legal protections. But legal protections don't mean much when accidents happen. There it was, the threat Detective Morrison needed. I forced myself to lean forward, as if I was considering his offer. What kind of accidents? The kind that happen to people who don't understand how serious business works. Like maybe someone breaks into your apartment while you're at work. Or maybe your car has brake problems on I-25. Or maybe you slip and fall down some stairs, like what almost happened to your dad before his ticker gave out. My heart hammered against the wire. You threatened my father physically. Tony's expression hardened. I had some associates check on Dave a few times, make sure he understood the urgency of the situation. Old man was tougher than he looked, took 3 visits before he started taking me seriously. But that last conversation we had, March 16th, he finally got the message. March 16th. The night before Dad died. The night Marcus said Dad had called him, knowing his heart was failing. What did you tell him? Same thing I'm telling you. Pay up, or the people you love start having very bad luck. Tony pulled out his phone and showed me a photo that made my stomach lurch, my apartment building, taken from across the street. Nice place. Shame if something happened to it. I was supposed to keep him talking, but rage was drowning out Detective Morrison's careful instructions. You killed him. My father died because you threatened his family. Your father died because he had a bad heart and a gambling addict for a son. I just helped him understand the consequences of poor parenting. Tony's smile was pure malice now. But hey, silver lining, now I get to work with a smart kid instead of the fuck-up. He reached across the table and grabbed my wrist, his grip tight enough to bruise. $12,000, Emma. You've got until Friday to wire it to an account I'll specify. After that, your luck starts running real bad, real fast. Let go of me. When I'm finished talking. His grip tightened. Your brother cost me money, your father cost me time, and now you're going to cost me patience if you don't start taking this seriously. I know about the house fund, I know about the life insurance, I know about every penny David moved around in his final weeks. Don't make me work harder than I have to. Through the coffee shop window, I could see Detective Morrison's unmarked car, waiting for my signal. But Tony wasn't done. Oh, and Emma. If you're thinking about involving the police, remember that accidents happen to cops too. Detective Morrison's got a real nice family, wife works at Presbyterian Hospital, daughter goes to Cherry Creek High School. Would hate for them to get caught up in your family's problems. He knew about Detective Morrison. Somehow, Tony Castellanos knew exactly what we were planning. And I was sitting across from him, wearing a wire, with no backup plan and 3 days left to make Dad's impossible choice. Tony released my wrist and leaned back, watching my face carefully. You look surprised. Did you really think I wouldn't know about your little police consultation this morning? Emma, sweetheart, I've been in this business for 15 years. You don't stay alive that long without having friends in useful places. My mouth went dry. If Tony knew about Detective Morrison, knew about the wire, then this whole meeting was a trap. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you don't. Tony pulled out a small device that looked like a garage door opener and pressed a button. Static erupted in my earpiece, he was jamming the wire's signal. There we go. Now we can have a real conversation without your new friend listening in. I glanced toward the window, but Detective Morrison's car was gone. Either he'd moved to a different position, or something had gone very wrong with the surveillance plan. Relax, Tony said, noticing my panic. Nobody's going anywhere. But I wanted you to understand something important. I don't just collect debts, Emma. I collect information. And the information I've collected about your family is very interesting. He pulled out a manila folder and spread several photographs across the table. My blood turned to ice as I recognized them. Pictures of Marcus entering Turning Point Recovery Center, pictures of me at Cornerstone Bank, pictures of Dad's house taken from different angles over several weeks. Your father wasn't the only one keeping records, Tony continued. See, when someone owes me as much as Marcus did, I make it my business to understand their whole situation. Family assets, daily routines, pressure points. The next photo made me gasp audibly. It showed Dad in his backyard 3 weeks before he died, hanging laundry on the clothesline Mom had installed years ago. But he kept looking over his shoulder, his face drawn with exhaustion and fear. This was taken March 1st, Tony said conversationally. Notice how skinny Dave got in his final weeks. That's what constant stress does to a man. Stops eating, stops sleeping, hard working overtime pumping adrenaline through his system. You're proud of this? My voice came out as a whisper. I'm proud of being thorough. Your father made this harder than it needed to be. If he'd just paid Marcus's debt when I first approached him in February, we could have avoided all the unpleasantness. Tony tapped another photo, Dad at the grocery store, constantly checking behind him. But Dave wanted to play games, set up legal protections, try to outsmart me with bank transfers and lawyer tricks. The folder contained more photos than I could process. Marcus's apartment building. My workplace at Romano's restaurant. Even Linda Morrison's house next door to Dad's. Tony had been watching our entire family for months. The beautiful thing about fear, Tony continued, is that it's a debt that compounds daily. Your father started owing me $12,000 in cash. But then he cost me time, effort, surveillance expenses. By the time he died, the Harrison family debt had grown to $18,000. That's not how debts work. That's how my debts work. Tony's smile was razor sharp. But here's where it gets interesting, Emma. I know about your father's 3 options. And I know you haven't decided which one to choose. My heart stopped. There was no way Tony could know about Dad's legal arrangements unless someone had told him. How do you? Option 1 puts you on the hook as Marcus's guarantor. That makes you responsible for his future debts to me too. Option 2 gives you all the money but leaves Marcus unprotected in prison, and I have friends in the Colorado Department of Corrections who don't like gambling welchers. Option 3 splits everything 50-50, but $38,000 each isn't enough for both of you to disappear forever. Tony leaned forward, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. So here's option 4, Emma. You pay me $25,000 right now, call it interest on the emotional distress your family has caused me, and I disappear forever. No more threats, no more surveillance, no more problems. Marcus gets a clean slate when he gets out of treatment. $25,000. That's more than half of everything Dad left me. Consider it a family discount. Because option 5 is much more expensive. His eyes went cold. Option 5 is what happens when little girls think they're smarter than men who've been collecting debts since before they were born. Before I could respond, Tony gathered up his photographs and stood. You've got 48 hours to wire the money, Emma. After that, we stop negotiating and start demonstrating. He dropped a business card on the table, Castellanos Financial Services, with a phone number and nothing else. Oh, and Emma. Detective Morrison won't be bothering us anymore. Amazing how quickly good cops can be reassigned to cold cases when the right people make the right phone calls. You're on your own now. As Tony walked away, I sat frozen in the coffee shop booth, staring at his business card and realizing that Dad's impossible choice had just become a matter of life and death. And I had less than 2 days to find $25,000, or discover exactly what option 5 looked like. I sat in that coffee shop for 20 minutes after Tony left, my hands shaking too badly to hold my phone steady. When I finally managed to call Detective Morrison, it went straight to voicemail. So did the second call. And the third. By 4 p.m., I was standing outside the downtown police precinct, demanding to speak with someone about Detective Morrison's whereabouts. The desk sergeant, a tired-looking woman with graying hair, barely looked up from her computer. Detective Morrison has been reassigned to the cold case unit, effective immediately, she said in the tone of someone who'd already had this conversation several times today. If you need to file a report, I can connect you with Detective Walsh in financial crimes. Reassigned? He was working my case this morning. Ma'am, personnel reassignments are not public information. Would you like to speak with Detective Walsh or not? Detective Walsh turned out to be a kid who looked barely old enough to drive, let alone investigate threats from men like Tony Castellanos. When I explained the situation, his response was exactly what I'd feared. Without Detective Morrison's case files, I'll need to start the investigation from scratch, he said, not even trying to hide his reluctance. That could take several weeks. I don't have several weeks. I have 48 hours. MS. Harrison, if you're in immediate danger, I can arrange for a patrol car to drive by your residence a few times. A few drive-bys aren't going to stop Tony Castellanos. I pulled out my phone and played him the audio I'd managed to record before the signal got jammed. This man threatened to kill me if I don't pay him $25,000 by Friday. Detective Walsh listened to 30 seconds of static-filled conversation before shaking his head. The audio quality is too poor to use as evidence. Even if I could make out the threats clearly, we'd need corroborating evidence to build a case. I left the police station feeling more alone than I had since Dad's funeral. Tony had been right, I was on my own now, with no legal protection and no one to turn to for help. Except maybe Marcus. I drove straight to Turning Point Recovery Center, hoping Dr. Chen would let me speak with him despite the restrictions on contact during my decision period. The receptionist made me wait 40 minutes before Dr. Chen appeared, her expression carefully neutral. Emma, I understand you're under pressure, but Marcus is at a critical stage in his treatment. Any disruption could. Dr. Chen, there's a man named Tony Castellanos who's threatening to kill me if I don't pay my brother's gambling debts. I need Marcus to tell me everything he knows about this guy, his connections, his methods, anything that might help me understand what I'm dealing with. Dr. Chen's professional composure cracks slightly. Threatening to kill you. $25,000 by Friday, or he starts demonstrating what happens to people who don't pay. I showed her Tony's business card. The police can't help me. My father's legal arrangements can't protect me. Marcus is the only person who understands how dangerous this man really is. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from my half-brother in a sterile conference room, watching him turn Tony's business card over and over in his hands like it might bite him. Jesus Christ, Emma. Tony's asking for $25,000. That's not collection, that's extortion. Tell me something I don't know. Like why he's so confident the police won't help me. Marcus looked up, his face pale. Because Tony doesn't just take bets, Emma. He washes money for bigger operations, drug dealers, gun runners, people who can afford to keep cops on payroll. Half the Denver PD probably owes him favors. Then how do I make this stop? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring at the table. There might be a way. But Emma, you're not going to like it. Marcus looked up from Tony's business card, his expression more serious than I'd ever seen it. Emma, what I'm about to tell you, it's going to change how you see me forever. I already know you're a gambling addict who forged my signature and put Dad's house at risk. How much worse could it get? Because I wasn't just Tony's client, Emma. For the last 6 months, I was also his informant. The words hit me like a physical blow. What does that mean? Marcus rubbed his face with both hands, suddenly looking decades older than his 26 years. When my debts got too high to pay, Tony offered me an alternative. He had other clients, people with money, people who thought they were smarter than him. He wanted inside information about their finances, their families, their pressure points. My stomach turned to ice. You spied on other people for him. I fed him information about 3 different families over 6 months. Banking details, family dynamics, who had money and who was pretending to have money. Marcus's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. That's how I kept Tony from breaking my legs, Emma. I sold out other people's secrets. The room felt like it was spinning. Did you tell him about Dad's money? Not intentionally. But Tony's smart, he pieces things together from casual conversations. When I mentioned Dad was helping me get treatment, that he'd been moving money around to pay for it, Tony started asking questions. I stared at my brother, trying to process this new level of betrayal. So when Dad emptied our joint account, Tony already knew to watch for it. Probably. But Emma, there's more. Marcus leaned forward, lowering his voice even further. The other families I informed on. 2 of them paid Tony's demands immediately. But the Hendersons, they tried to fight back, get the police involved. What happened to them? Marcus's hands were shaking now. Sarah Henderson was in a car accident 3 weeks later. Brake failure on I-225. She survived, but barely. The investigation found evidence of tampering, but no witnesses, no suspects, no arrests. The coffee shop conversation replayed in my mind, Tony's casual mention of brake problems on I-25. He actually follows through on his threats. Emma, Tony Castellanos isn't just some bookie who gets rough when people don't pay. He's part of an organization that makes problems disappear, permanently, if necessary. The only reason he's giving you 48 hours instead of 48 minutes is because Dad's death spooked him. Heart attacks draw less attention than accidents, but he can't count on getting that lucky twice. Dr. Chen knocked on the conference room door. I'm sorry to interrupt, but visiting hours end in 10 minutes. Dr. Chen, I said quickly, I need you to hear this. Marcus has information about organized criminal activity that might be relevant to my safety. She stepped into the room, closing the door behind her. What kind of information? Marcus looked at me, then at Dr. Chen, weighing his options. If I tell you everything I know about Tony's operation, about the other families, about how he launders money through his sports betting business, can you guarantee Emma's protection? Marcus, I'm a therapist, not a police officer. I can't guarantee anything except that I'm mandated to report criminal activity that puts people in immediate danger. Then report it, I said firmly. Because I'd rather deal with the legal consequences of Marcus being an informant than end up like Sarah Henderson. Marcus took a deep breath. Tony runs his collection business through a network of legitimate companies, auto repair shops, restaurants, even a small construction company. When someone can't pay their gambling debts, he offers them jobs at these businesses. But the jobs are covers for money laundering operations. How does that help me? I asked. Because if Tony's running a money laundering scheme, the FBI might be interested. And if the FBI gets involved, local police connections don't matter anymore. Marcus pulled out a small piece of paper from his pocket. I kept records, Emma. Account numbers, business names, dates of transactions. Everything Tony made me help with. I stared at the paper, covered in Marcus's careful handwriting. You've been planning this. I've been hoping I'd never have to use it. But when Dr. Chen told me about Tony's threats, Marcus looked directly at me for the first time since I'd arrived. Emma, I destroyed our family because I was too much of a coward to face the consequences of my addiction. I won't let my cowardice get you killed too. Dr. Chen was already reaching for her phone. I need to make some calls. Emma, don't go home tonight. Don't go anywhere alone. Marcus, you just became a federal witness. As I left Turning Point Recovery Center with a list of FBI phone numbers and Marcus's handwritten evidence, I realized Dad's impossible choice had evolved into something he never could have anticipated. Now I had to choose between trusting the federal government to protect me from Tony Castellanos or finding $25,000 before Friday's deadline. And I had 36 hours to make the right decision. The FBI field office on Stout Street looked like every government building I'd ever seen, beige walls, fluorescent lighting, and the faint smell of burnt coffee. Special Agent Maria Santos had kind eyes but the no-nonsense demeanor of someone who dealt with cases like mine before. Mr. Harrison's information is solid, she said, spreading Marcus's handwritten notes across her desk. We've been watching Castellanos' financial services for 8 months, but we needed someone with inside knowledge to build a case. So you can arrest Tony. We can arrest him, but not until we have enough evidence to dismantle his entire operation. That takes time, maybe weeks. Agent Santos looked at me sympathetically. Time you don't have. My phone buzzed. A text from Tony, * 24 hours left, Emma. Hope you're making good choices, *. He's not going to wait for the FBI investigation, I said, showing her the message. Agent Santos studied the text, then made a decision that changed everything. Ms. Harrison, how do you feel about helping us accelerate our timeline? 3 hours later, I was sitting in the same coffee shop where Tony had threatened me, wearing a much more sophisticated wire and surrounded by federal agents posing as customers. The plan was simple, get Tony to incriminate himself on tape while a SWAT team waited outside. Tony arrived exactly on time, sliding into the booth with his trademark predatory smile. Emma, sweetheart. Please tell me you have good news. I have the money, I said, placing a briefcase on the table. It contained exactly $25,000, my entire house fund plus some of Dad's life insurance money. Agent Santos had promised it would be returned after the arrest, but sitting across from Tony, I wondered if I'd ever see it again. Smart girl. Your father would be proud. Actually, I think my father would be disgusted. I opened the briefcase slightly, letting Tony see the cash. But before we complete this transaction, I need to know something. Did you kill him? Tony's smile widened. Your father had a heart attack, Emma. Very sad, very natural. After you spent weeks threatening his family. After you had your people follow him, intimidate him, make him afraid to sleep in his own bedroom. I leaned forward, remembering Agent Santos's coaching. That's not natural, Tony. That's murder. Prove it. His voice carried the casual confidence of a man who'd never faced consequences. Dave Harrison died of natural causes. End of story. What about Sarah Henderson? Was her brake failure natural too? For the first time, Tony's expression shifted slightly. I don't know what you're talking about. The woman whose family you targeted last year. The one who almost died when her brakes were cut on I-225. I could see Agent Santos through the window, speaking into her radio. Did you handle that personally, or do you have people for the dirty work? Tony closed the briefcase and leaned back. You're fishing, Emma. And fishing is dangerous when you don't know what's in the water. I know there are federal agents surrounding this building. I know Marcus gave them detailed records of your money laundering operation. And I know you just admitted on tape that you threatened my father before his death. Tony's smile disappeared completely. You stupid little. The coffee shop door exploded inward as 6 FBI agents in tactical gear swarmed the building. Tony reached inside his jacket, but Agent Santos was already behind him, pressing a Glock against the base of his skull. Anthony Castellanos, you're under arrest for extortion, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. As they dragged Tony away in handcuffs, he looked back at me with pure hatred. This doesn't end here, Emma. I have friends. Your friends are being arrested too, Agent Santos said calmly. We've been watching your entire network for months. Thanks to your brother's information, we're shutting down operations in 6 states. Later, sitting in Dad's house with my $25,000 safely returned, I finally opened the third envelope from his safety deposit box, the one I'd been too scared to read before. Inside was a short note dated March 16th, the night before he died. Emma, if you're reading this, then the choices I forced on you were harder than I hoped. But I need you to know, whatever you decide about Marcus, whatever happens with the money, I'm proud of the woman you've become. You're stronger than I was, braver than I was, and smarter than I ever gave you credit for, *. The house fund has $47,000 because you earned every penny. Don't let anyone, not Marcus, not me, not some criminal, take your dreams away, *. Love, Dad. *P.S. I chose option 1. Marcus gets his second chance, and you get your house. Some gambles are worth taking, *. I found the final legal documents in Dad's desk the next morning. He'd already signed the restitution agreement, already made me Marcus's guarantor, already chosen to believe in redemption over revenge. But he'd also set up a trust that would cover Marcus's payments if he relapsed. Dad had risked everything on his son's recovery, but he protected me from the consequences of that risk. 6 months later, I closed on a small Tudor house on Maple Street with the perfect kitchen I'd dreamed about. Marcus, 90 days sober and working at a warehouse job he actually loved, helped me move in. Dad would have liked this place, he said, carrying boxes up the front steps. Dad would have liked seeing you clean, I replied, and for the first time in years, Marcus laughed without shame. The bank teller had been right that terrible day in March, our account was empty. But Dad had been planning for that all along.